children. 6-year-old Lily Sullivan, small for her age, bright-eyed, wearing her favorite pink jacket, dotted with tiny metallic star stickers, and her 4-year-old brother Jack, whose wide grin was known to everyone on their quiet Nova Scotia street. On a day like any other, they were simply gone. No warning, no confirmed sightings after a certain hour, no sound that neighbors could point to. And yet, before nightfall, both children had vanished from their home and from the life they knew. The first hours, the most critical in any missing persons investigation, were lost to confusion and hesitation. Reports trickled in slowly, search zones shifted, and while volunteers combed familiar routes, vital areas were left unchecked until days later. One location has haunted this case from the very beginning: a small wooden bridge tucked away on a dirt road not far from where the children lived. It's here that a single metallic star sticker was discovered, a perfect match to the pattern on Lily's jacket. But the meaning of that find? Still unexplained. Trail camera footage from the area was delayed in being reviewed. GPS tracking data that could have shown movements toward the bridge? Nowhere to be found. Was this a technical oversight or something more deliberate? These are not just holes in an investigation. They are cracks where the truth could be hiding. Because children don't just disappear without someone, somewhere, knowing what happened. And in this case, the silence is almost as disturbing as the disappearance itself. This is not just the search for Lily and Jack Sullivan. It's the search for the missing hours, the missing evidence, and the missing truth. But before we dive into this, kindly subscribe to our channel if you believe in fighting for justice. We've just crossed 4,000 subscribers, all because of your support. And we need that same energy to reach 5,000, then 6,000, and then 10,000. So go ahead and drop your fingerprints on that subscribe button and where you're watching from, because wherever you are, the day this vision is fulfilled, I will send my appreciation straight to you. Let's keep building this community that fights for justice together. Nova Scotia's Lansdowne Station is not the kind of place where you expect headlines. It's a tight-knit rural community, framed by forest lines and old rail routes, where neighbors still wave at one another, and news usually travels faster by word of mouth than by phone. Life here moves slowly, but in the days after May 2nd, that rhythm was shattered. The last confirmed sighting of Lily and Jack Sullivan came on the morning of that day. Witness accounts placed them at home, under the watch of family. 6-year-old Lily in her bright pink jacket, the one with metallic star stickers, and 4-year-old Jack tagging close behind. From all indications, it began like any other spring morning. The official missing persons report was filed at 10:01 a.m. That timestamp is critical, because everything before it is pieced together through inconsistent witness statements, half-recalled timelines, and movements that don't quite match up. Between the moment the children were last seen and the moment that call was made, there is a void. A space in which whatever happened to them took place. In those first hours, the public's reaction was marked by confusion. Some believed the children had simply wandered off, perhaps chasing each other toward the woods, or along the dirt paths that trace the edges of Lansdowne Station. Others, more suspicious from the start, feared foul play, pointing out that both children vanishing together, without a trace, is far from common. Wait a minute. Do you know how many nights I've stayed up going over the same questions? How many times I've replayed those 2 days in May, looking for the one detail everyone else missed? And yet, people still treat this like a story to pick apart for entertainment, while Lily and Jack are still gone. I'm tired of people chasing likes and followers when 2 children never came home. If you think you can scroll past this and sleep peacefully tonight, ask yourself what it says about you. I'm not here for clicks. I'm not here for subscribers. I'm here because 2 children, with real faces and real laughter, disappeared. Every second wasted on chasing clout is a second stolen from the fight for answers. I don't care about being the first to post. I care about being the last one standing when the truth finally comes out. And when that day comes, it won't matter who broke the story. It'll matter that justice was served for Lily and Jack. This division in the earliest moments would set the tone for everything that followed, because from here on, the story of Lily and Jack would be told in 2 competing versions, one of innocent misadventure, and another of something darker, intentional and far more disturbing. 5 days into the search, when the community was already fraying under the strain, a national headline tore through Lansdowne Station like a storm front. The Globe and Mail, not a local outlet, but one of Canada's most prominent newspapers, dropped an in-depth investigative feature on the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan. Buried within the carefully crafted paragraphs were details that had never been made public. The centerpiece of the revelations was Daniel Martell, the children's stepfather. The article pulled threads from his past, an unstable work history, prior disputes with neighbors, and whispers of family tension that until now had been dismissed as rumor. The Globe and Mail didn't claim Martell was guilty of anything, but it didn't have to. The way the profile was laid out, the shadow it cast was unavoidable. The community's reaction was immediate and divided. For some, this was the missing piece they had been quietly suspecting, a reason to finally voice their doubts about the family's public statements. To them, the article wasn't just reporting, it was confirmation that their unease had merit. For others, it was a betrayal, a trial by media that risked turning grief into a spectacle and pointing fingers before facts were confirmed. Within hours of the article's release, coffee shop conversations turned sharper, whispers grew in volume, and the line between supporter and skeptic in Lansdowne Station became a chasm. And through it all, the one question hanging in the air wasn't just about the children anymore. It was what else hasn't been told. If you want to understand the pressure points in this case, you have to read Daniel Martell's own words. Not through the filter of headlines or rumors, but exactly as he chose to present them in the private Facebook group dedicated to finding Lily and Jack. In one of his earliest posts, Daniel lays out a simple sequence of events. For May 1st, we went to the pizza shop for supper. Got back, I worked on the fence for a bit. The kids were already in bed by then. It sounds ordinary enough, almost mundane, but the simplicity is exactly what makes it so important. The next day, May 2nd, the account shifts. Daniel writes that the children were marked absent from school by their mother, Malia, early that morning. What's striking is that in his posts, there's an absence of clarity about whether he himself saw or heard Lily or Jack that morning. In fact, over multiple messages, the detail changes. Sometimes it's implied he saw them. Other times, the language slips into uncertainty, as though he's recounting what he was told, not what he personally witnessed. Then there's the most unsettling line of all, his repeated insistence that this was not an abduction, but rather the work of someone they knew. It's a phrase he uses more than once, and one that begs the question, how can he be so sure? Is it intuition, inside information, or an attempt to steer public perception in a specific direction? Daniel also made a point of saying he had 100 hours with police and interviews, and that he personally provided leads. The emphasis on cooperation might have been intended to show transparency, but to some it read as overcompensation, a need to establish credibility before it's even challenged. When you lay these posts out chronologically, a pattern emerges, a narrative that begins tightly controlled, then loosens into small contradictions, and eventually leans on absolutes, statements of what couldn't have happened, without providing the evidence for such certainty. The words may have been typed in moments of exhaustion and stress, but in an active investigation, language is never just language, it's a map. And sometimes the things left unsaid draw the sharpest lines. When someone posts repeatedly in a public forum about a case this raw, this close to home, there's often more at play than just sharing updates. Psychologists and investigators alike recognize a pattern. Over-explaining can be a sign of one of two things: a deep, genuine need to control the story for clarity's sake, or a subconscious attempt to protect oneself. In high-pressure situations, especially when the eyes of a grieving community are fixed on you, the temptation to frame your role becomes overwhelming. Not to fabricate, necessarily, but to curate. To choose which details to amplify and which to quietly leave in the shadows. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's pure survival instinct, a way to control the chaos when everything feels like it's spiraling. But social media changes the equation entirely. Unlike a closed-door police interview, every word you type is instantly dissected by dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of strangers. Each phrase becomes a breadcrumb, whether you intended it or not. Every minor shift in tone, every added adjective, every definitive statement can spark suspicion, build theories, or create pressure to stick to a version of events you've already made public. And here's the danger. Once you've set a narrative in motion, walking it back becomes nearly impossible. Even small corrections can look like backtracking. Even honest forgetfulness can feel, to outsiders, like deception. In that way, the psychological weight of being the voice in a case like this can work like a slow vice, tightening with every post, every comment, every DM that asks, "But are you sure that's how it happened?" Under that kind of pressure, people don't just speak, they perform. And that performance can reveal just as much, or more than the facts themselves. Among Daniel Martell's most striking public statements was the claim that almost $1 million had been spent on the search in a single day. At face value, that number lands like a thunderclap. $1 million, in 24 hours, paints a picture of a search effort so massive, so resource-heavy, that it borders on the cinematic. It implies a scale of urgency that could be seen from space. But when you break it down, reality may tell a different story. Yes, search operations are costly. Helicopters, drones, dive teams, specialized canine units. They don't come cheap. Add in overtime pay for law enforcement, fuel for vehicles, and the logistical costs of feeding and housing search crews, and numbers climb quickly. Still, experts say that hitting almost $1 million in a single day would require either a catastrophic level of resource deployment or the kind of large-scale mobilization reserved for disasters, not missing persons cases in small rural areas. So the question becomes, was Daniel exaggerating? Was this a misunderstanding, a miscommunication of cumulative costs over several days, or was it an intentional statement meant to impress upon the public, and perhaps the authorities, just how seriously the case was being taken under his watch? Why does this matter? Because in criminal investigations, numbers aren't just numbers, they're part of the narrative. A claim like that can shape public perception, making the search seem either impressively committed or questionably extravagant. And if the statement is later proven inaccurate, it doesn't just cast doubt on the figure itself, it chips away at the credibility of the person who said it. In the court of public opinion, credibility is currency. Once you lose it, no amount of clarification can buy it back. Before Lily and Jack's disappearance, there had already been visits from Child Protective Services. At least, that's what multiple sources close to the family suggest. But here's the problem. The official record isn't public, and the few details we do have feel like fragments of a much bigger picture. What we know is this: CPS doesn't knock on a family's door without cause. It takes a report, a concern, a moment where someone, a teacher, a neighbor, a relative, decides something isn't right. That alone raises the question, what was seen? Was it a pattern of neglect? Was it a single alarming incident? Or was it something else entirely? Something that slipped just beneath the threshold of an emergency removal? And then there's the bigger question, how many visits were there really? Was it a one-time check-in, where CPS found nothing urgent? Or were there multiple interventions, each one potentially stacking up into a file thick enough to tell a story on its own? In many missing children's cases, we've seen tragic patterns emerge, prior agency involvement that either couldn't act fast enough or failed to act decisively. The outcomes of these visits remain one of the most shadowed corners of this case. If CPS found no imminent danger, the children would have remained in the home. But no imminent danger doesn't always mean safe. And if there were warnings documented, logged, but unheeded, then we're not just looking at a family tragedy. We're looking at a system that might have had its chance to prevent it. In that light, these past interventions aren't side notes to the story. They might be the red flags waving in the background, long before the world knew Lily and Jack's names. When pressed, whether in conversations, Facebook posts, or interviews, Daniel Martell has pointed to one specific reason why he couldn't have harmed Lily or Jack. Mom heard them that morning. On the surface, it sounds like a straightforward alibi. But dig a little deeper, and it's not the airtight shield it's made out to be. First, hearing someone isn't the same as seeing them. And in the chaos of a school day morning, a sound, a door closing, a bed creaking, a voice in the hallway, can be interpreted 100 different ways. It's not a time-stamped video. It's not a neighbor's eyewitness account. It's a memory, and memories are fragile. They bend under time, pressure, and stress. Then there's the subtle shift in how Daniel frames his role in the aftermath. Over and over again, in post after post, he positions himself as the only one doing anything. the one making calls, the one pushing leads, the one logging hours with police. And while initiative in a crisis can be admirable, there's a psychological pattern worth noting here. When someone repeatedly stresses their effort, their sacrifice, their indispensability, it can intentionally or not create a narrative where blame is pushed outward. Is this deflection, an unconscious attempt to place himself above suspicion by spotlighting his good actions? Or is it genuine frustration, the voice of a man who feels abandoned by others in the search? Both possibilities exist side by side. But in an investigation, where every word is dissected, even the most casual claim of innocence must be examined for what it says, and what it leaves unsaid. Daniel Martell's posts, when read in sequence, don't just provide updates. They paint a portrait of a man who wanted to be seen as engaged, as active, as a key figure in the search for Lily and Jack. In post after post, we see him frame himself as the one making calls, chasing leads, sitting with the police for hours. We hear his frustrations at what others aren't doing. We see his timeline written in his own words, punctuated with small personal details, the pizza shop, the fence work, the sound of the children already in bed. But beneath that surface, there's a more complicated truth. These posts also reveal what isn't being said. They don't lock down his exact whereabouts during the crucial window of time. They don't provide independent verification for the sequence of events he's describing. And they don't explain the subtle shifts in language, the quiet adjustments to details that over time create a moving target for anyone trying to pin down the facts. Then there's the decision that still sparks debate, the day he vanished from the very Facebook group he'd once dominated. It wasn't random. It happened within days of the Globe and Mail publishing its investigation. An article that laid out details about his past and raised questions some in the community had been whispering about for months. Was this his way of protecting his mental health, cutting off a flood of hostility before it overwhelmed him? Or was it the calculated withdrawal of a man who sensed the tide was turning and didn't want to face the next wave of questions in public? There's a danger in mistaking volume for proof. Being vocal does not automatically make you innocent, and going quiet does not automatically make you guilty. In the disappearance of Lily and Jack, noise is not evidence, speculation is not truth. What matters, what has always mattered, is evidence. Hard, verifiable, indisputable evidence. And in this case, that evidence is still missing, just like the children at the center of it. If you've been following Lily and Jack's story, you already know this isn't just another headline. It's a timeline with cracks, statements with shadows, and two children who didn't simply vanish into thin air. Every detail matters. Every recollection, every observation, every piece of verifiable information could be the one that changes the course of this investigation. So I'm asking you, if you've seen something, heard something, or remembered something from those 2 days in May, speak up. Share it with the authorities. And if you leave it here in the comments, keep it factual. No rumors, no slander, only what can stand up under the weight of truth. Because somewhere out there, the truth exists, and someone knows exactly what happened. For Lily, for Jack. The clock is ticking. This is Detective Max. The mission here is justice, not spectacle.